Okay, so it's like we're diving into a story
Uh-huh.
that sounds like it's straight out of like a political thriller or something.
Yeah.
But it's actually happening right now.
Right.
It's January 2025.
Oh.
And Donald Trump
Yeah.
is about to be sworn in for his second term as president of the United States.
I know.
But there's a twist.
Okay.
Just 2 weeks
Right.
before Inauguration Day,
Uh-huh.
he's got a sentencing hearing
Oh, wow.
in a criminal case.
It's certainly a situation that throws a wrench into things.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
This case goes back to the 2016 election,
Right.
and it involves hush money payments
Okay.
made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels.
Right.
In May of last year,
Mm-hmm.
a New York jury found Trump guilty
Yeah.
of 34
Wow.
felony counts of falsifying business records related to these payments.
So the specifics of the charges really come down to
Yeah.
how those payments to Michael Cohen,
Right.
Trump's former lawyer who facilitated the hush money,
Right.
were documented and disguised within Trump's business records.
Throughout all of this, Trump has maintained his innocence,
Right.
claiming that the case is politically motivated
Yeah.
and aimed at damaging his 2024 campaign.
Which ironically,
Crazy he won.
Yeah.
His legal team has been very vocal,
Yes.
calling this a witch hunt,
Uh-huh.
arguing for a dismissal,
Yeah.
even citing his presidential victory as grounds to drop the charges.
Yeah. They've really been pushing that angle.
So here we are
Yeah.
with a president-elect
Man.
facing a criminal sentencing just days before taking office.
Wild.
It's almost unbelievable.
Really unprecedented.
So the big question, of course, is will he actually serve any time?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Okay.
The judge in the case, Justice Juan Merchant, has indicated he might be leaning towards an unconditional discharge.
Okay.
Essentially, that would mean no jail time,
Oh, wow.
no probation, or even a fine.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah.
34 felony convictions and he could just walk away?
It is unusual.
That doesn't seem right.
But it's important to understand the context here.
Right.
This isn't a case of violent crime
Right.
or a major financial fraud.
Okay.
The charges relate to the way these payments were recorded,
Uh-huh.
not the payments themselves.
Okay.
Also, Trump is 78 years old
Right.
and has no prior criminal record.
I see.
So these factors seem to be playing a role in the judge's thinking.
I see. So while it might feel like a slap on a good or two of them,
Uh-huh.
there are legal nuances that the judge is considering.
Right.
But this isn't the only legal trouble that Trump is facing, is it?
Exactly. There are other legal challenges looming,
Okay.
including the ongoing investigation into his handling of classified documents after leaving office in 2021,
Okay.
and 2 separate cases related to his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election results.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even if he dodges any serious consequences in this hush money case, he's still got a lot to deal with legally.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to an already unprecedented situation.
Yeah, it's almost like a never-ending saga.
It seems that way.
It's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And I imagine our listeners are curious to hear more about these other cases
Oh, absolutely.
and what they could mean for Trump's presidency.
But before we jump into those,
Okay.
let's delve a little deeper into the legal reasoning behind a potential unconditional discharge.
Okay.
There are actually some interesting parallels to other cases involving falsifying business records that can shed light on the judge's possible line of thinking.
Okay, let's unpack that. I think our listeners are probably wondering about those parallels and how they might apply to Trump's situation.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's look at some past cases.
Okay.
A few years back,
Oh,
there was a case involving a CEO
okay.
of a tech company
Hmm.
who was convicted of falsifying financial records to inflate the company's stock price.
Right.
The circumstances were different from Trump's case,
Uh-huh.
but the core legal principle,
Yeah.
falsifying records for personal gain,
Right.
was the same.
And what happened in that case?
Well,
Did the CEO serve time?
the CEO ended up receiving probation and a hefty fine, but no jail time.
Okay.
The judge in that case, much like Justice Merchant seems to be doing with Trump, weighed the nonviolent nature of the crime, the defendant's lack of prior convictions, and the potential broader economic consequences of imprisonment. It seems judges often take a more nuanced approach when dealing with white-collar crimes, especially when the individuals involved are high-profile or hold positions of power.
So while the charges are serious, the punishment isn't always as cut and dried as some might think.
Right.
It sounds like context plays a big role in sentencing.
Absolutely. And that's why legal experts are watching this case so closely.
Yeah.
How Justice Merchan balances those various factors from the severity of the charges to Trump's age and status will set a precedent for future cases involving powerful individuals.
It makes you wonder about the whole concept of equal justice under the law.
Hmm.
Does having money and influence really tilt the scales in your favor?
That's a question that has been debated for centuries.
Yeah.
This case certainly puts that debate front and center.
Yeah.
But let's not lose sight of the fact that regardless of the outcome of this particular sentencing,
Right.
Trump still faces those other investigations we mentioned earlier.
Right. The classified documents case and the election interference cases,
Exactly.
those seem even more serious.
Yes.
Potentially involving national security and the integrity of our elections.
Exactly. And the potential consequences in those cases are much more severe,
Okay.
including the possibility of significant prison time if he's found guilty.
Wow.
It's worth noting that the special counsel overseeing those investigations has a reputation for being thorough and relentless.
Okay, so we've got this hush money case, potentially with a slap on the wrist sentence.
Right.
And then these other more serious cases looming in the background.
Yeah.
It's a lot for anyone to handle,
It is.
let alone someone about to lead the country.
It's certainly a situation fraught with tension and uncertainty. And the timing couldn't be more dramatic.
Okay.
Imagine this
Yeah.
Trump, fresh off a potential sentencing, delivering his inaugural address just days later.
Oh, wow.
The optics are mind-boggling.
It's like something out of a movie, right?
It really is.
You can almost picture the scene. Protests, media frenzy, political commentators dissecting every word of the speech.
And the world will be watching.
Yeah.
How this all unfolds will have ramifications not just for American politics, but for global perceptions of American democracy as well.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how he'll even be able to focus on governing with all this hanging over him.
Right?
It's got to be incredibly distracting.
The potential for disruption is enormous.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to negotiate a trade deal or respond to an international crisis while simultaneously battling multiple legal challenges.
Right.
It's a recipe for instability.
And we haven't even touched on the political fallout.
Oh, of course.
His opponents are surely going to seize on this to paint him as unfit for office.
Absolutely. They'll argue that his conviction, even if he doesn't serve jail time, demonstrates a lack of respect for the law and undermines his ability to effectively lead the country.
Yeah. But let's be realistic. His supporters are likely to rally around him even more, seeing him as a victim of a political witch hunt.
Absolutely. They'll view any punishment, no matter how lenient, as further evidence of a deep state conspiracy to take him down.
Right.
It's a scenario that could further polarize the country and make finding common ground even more difficult.
So no matter what happens with this sentencing, it seems like we're heading into a presidency marked by division, legal battles, and a constant sense of uncertainty.
It's a prospect that raises some fundamental questions about the future of American democracy and the rule of law.
Yeah.
Can a country truly function effectively when its leader is mired in legal controversy and facing constant attacks on his legitimacy?
That's a question that will likely be debated for years to come.
It is.
But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back to this upcoming sentencing. You mentioned earlier that the judge's decision could set a precedent.
Right. If Justice Merchan chooses to give Trump an unconditional discharge,
Yeah.
it could signal to other powerful individuals that they can essentially get away with bending or breaking the rules as long as those rules fall under the umbrella of white-collar crime.
But what if he does decide to impose some sort of punishment?
Right.
What message would that send?
That's where things get really fascinating.
Okay.
If Trump is sentenced to even a symbolic punishment,
Uh-huh.
like probation or community service,
Yeah.
it would send a powerful message that no one, not even the President of the United States, is above the law.
Okay, so we have two very different potential outcomes here.
Right.
Each with its own set of implications.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible to predict which way the judge will go.
It's true. We'll just have to wait and see what happens on January 10th.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's worth pondering this.
Okay.
What does all of this tell us about the state of accountability for those in power?
That's a thought-provoking question. Are we at a point where wealth, influence, and political connections can shield individuals from facing real consequences for their actions?
That's the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a fear that transcends this particular case. It speaks to a broader concern about fairness and justice in our society.
It's a concern that I'm sure many of our listeners share.
Yeah,
And it's something we'll continue to explore as this story unfolds.
absolutely. This case and the others that follow will force us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the systems we've created.
It's a lot to digest, but these are conversations that we need to have.
They are.
And as always, we're here to guide you through it all.
We're here to provide the context, the analysis, and the hopefully insightful observations to help you make sense of this complex and ever-evolving situation.
So with that in mind, let's shift gears a bit and delve into those other legal challenges Trump is facing.
Okay.
First up, the classified documents case.
All right.
This one has been making headlines for months now.
Right. To recap, this case stems from the discovery of classified documents at Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence after he left office in 2021.
Right.
The National Archives and Records Administration realized that certain documents were missing and requested their return.
And that's when things got messy, right?
Exactly. There was a back and forth between Trump's lawyers and the National Archives, ultimately leading to the FBI executing a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022.
That search warrant caused quite a stir,
It did.
with Trump and his supporters claiming it was a politically motivated attack.
It certainly fueled the fire of those who believe there's a deep state conspiracy against Trump.
Yeah.
But putting aside the political rhetoric, the legal question at the heart of this case is whether Trump intentionally mishandled classified information, potentially putting national security at risk.
And the stakes in this case are incredibly high, right?
Absolutely. If convicted, Trump could face significant prison time, potentially up to 20 years on some of the charges.
Wow, that's a far cry from the potential slap on the wrist in the hush money case.
It is.
This classified documents case seems to be a much bigger legal threat.
It's definitely a more serious situation, legally speaking.
Yeah.
And the potential consequences for Trump, both personally and politically, are much more severe.
Okay, so we've got the hush money case with its potential sentencing, the classified documents case with its ongoing investigation, and then there are the two cases related to alleged election interference in 2020.
Right. These cases stem from Trump's efforts to overturn the results of the 2020 election, which he lost to Joe Biden.
These cases seem particularly sensitive given the current political climate and the ongoing debate about election integrity.
They are incredibly sensitive and have the potential to further divide the country.
Right.
These cases delve into the very heart of American democracy and raise fundamental questions about the peaceful transfer of power.
I imagine these cases will be incredibly complex and involve a lot of legal wrangling.
They will be very complex,
Yeah.
involving a web of legal arguments and constitutional questions. We're talking about potential violations of state and federal election laws, obstruction of justice charges, and possibly even conspiracy charges.
Wow, it's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It is.
And the potential consequences for Trump are huge, right?
They are. We're talking about potential disqualification from holding public office, hefty fines, and even the possibility of prison time.
So to recap, we have the hush money case with the potential sentencing just days before Trump's inauguration, the classified documents case with its ongoing investigation, and the two election interference cases, which are also in the investigative phase.
Right.
It's a legal minefield, to say the least.
It's a situation unlike anything we've ever seen in American history.
Yeah.
A president about to be sworn in for a second term facing a slew of legal challenges that could derail his presidency before it even begins.
It's a story that's both fascinating and alarming,
It is.
and it's a story that's far from over.
Exactly. We're just at the beginning of what promises to be a long and tumultuous journey. And as always, we'll be here to help you navigate the twists and turns along the way.
So with all this in mind, let's step back for a moment
Right.
and consider the bigger picture.
Right.
What does all of this tell us about the state of American democracy in 2025?
That's the question that lingers, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we witnessing a system that is resilient and capable of holding even the most powerful accountable? Or are we seeing a system that is fraying at the edges, vulnerable to manipulation and abuse of power?
It's a question that each of us as citizens must grapple with,
We do.
and the answers are far from clear-cut.
That's for sure.
What is clear, however,
Yeah,
is that the stakes are incredibly high.
they are.
The decisions made in these cases and the actions taken by those in power will have profound implications for the future of American democracy.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about the legal outcomes.
Right.
It's about the broader societal impact.
Mm-hmm.
How will these cases shape our understanding of justice, accountability, and the rule of law?
That's the question that keeps me up at night.
Yeah,
Are we setting a dangerous precedent that normalizes corruption and impunity?
right.
Or are we reaffirming the core principles of a democratic society where no one is above the law?
These are questions that will likely be debated for years to come.
They will.
And as always, we encourage you, our listener, to engage in these conversations, to stay informed and to hold those in power accountable.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, the future of American democracy rests in the hands of its citizens.
Yeah.
It's up to us to demand transparency, integrity, and a commitment to the rule of law from those we entrust to lead us.
We'll be back shortly to continue this deep dive and explore some of the potential scenarios that could unfold in the coming weeks and months.
Okay.
Stay tuned. All right, we're back and ready to dive into some potential scenarios.
Okay.
It's January 3rd, 2025,
Okay.
a week before Trump's sentencing.
Yeah.
And just 2 weeks before he's set to take the oath of office again.
Wow.
Where do you think this is all headed?
Well, the million-dollar question is whether Justice Merchan will impose any kind of punishment in the hush money case.
Right.
If he does opt for an unconditional discharge,
Yeah.
it'll send shockwaves through the legal and political worlds.
I can only imagine the headlines.
Oh, yeah.
Trump walks free.
Uh-huh. No consequences for the president-elect.
Exactly. And that outcome could embolden Trump and his supporters, fueling their claims of a biased justice system.
Right.
It could also complicate those other legal cases he's
I
facing.
really could.
How so?
Well, imagine the prosecution's challenge.
Yeah.
In those other cases, if Trump can credibly claim that this first conviction was nothing more than a political hit job,
Right.
it could make it much harder to secure convictions in the classified documents case or the election interference cases.
That's a really good point. It almost sets a precedent, creating a narrative that Trump is untouchable, a victim of a system that's out to get him.
Precisely. And that narrative could be very powerful, particularly among his base, who already view him as a fighter who takes on the establishment.
Okay, so that's one scenario. Unconditional discharge, Trump claims victory, and the other cases become even more difficult to prosecute. What's another possible outcome?
Well, let's say Justice Merchan decides to impose some form of punishment, even if it's symbolic, like probation or a fine.
Okay.
That would send a very different message.
It would show that even a president-elect isn't above the law, right?
Exactly. It would uphold the principle of equal justice and potentially undermine Trump's narrative of victimhood.
Yeah.
It would also put immense pressure on him to either resign before taking office
Right.
or face potential impeachment proceedings once he's in the White House.
Impeachment. Again,
Yeah.
I thought we were done with that after the first term.
Well, the political climate is different now. If Trump is seen as having flaunted the law and then assumed the presidency, it could create a constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
The opposition party would be under immense pressure to take action.
That would be a political earthquake.
Yeah,
Imagine a second Trump presidency consumed by impeachment proceedings.
I know.
It would be unprecedented. Yeah.
It would be chaos. And it's not just the domestic implications we need to consider.
Right.
How would other countries react to an American president who's a convicted criminal,
Right.
potentially facing impeachment?
It would certainly damage America's credibility on the world stage.
Uh-huh.
It would make it much harder for the U.S. to assert moral authority or lead on global issues.
Exactly. It would be a major setback for American diplomacy and could embolden our adversaries.
So whether he walks free or receives some form of punishment, this case has the potential to shake the foundations of American politics and international relations. It's a lot to process.
It is. And it's important to remember that we're just talking about one case here.
Right.
There are still those other investigations looming,
Yeah.
the classified documents case and the election interference cases.
Right.
The outcomes of those cases could be even more consequential.
It's almost too much to contemplate. A president facing multiple criminal trials while trying to run the country.
I know.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. And it raises some profound questions about the future of American democracy.
Yeah.
Can a system designed for a different era cope with the challenges of a hyper-partisan, media-saturated world?
That's a question that historians and political scientists will be debating for years to come.
For sure.
But for us in this moment, the question is more immediate.
Right.
How do we as citizens navigate this turbulent landscape?
I think the key is to stay informed,
Yeah.
to be critical of the information we consume, and to engage in thoughtful dialogue with those who hold different viewpoints.
And to remember that despite the deep divisions in our society, we all share a common stake in the future of this country.
Beautifully said. At the end of the day, American democracy is an ongoing experiment.
Right.
And like all experiments, it requires constant vigilance, adaptation, and a willingness to learn from our mistakes.
And perhaps a bit of hope.
Yes.
Hope that we can find a way to bridge the divides, to restore faith in our institutions, and to create a more just and equitable society.
Hope is essential. Without hope, we succumb to cynicism and despair.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what those who seek to undermine democracy want.
So to our listener, we leave you with this thought. Stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, stay hopeful.
Yes.
The future of American democracy may be uncertain, but it's in our hands to shape it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.